Hi, my name is Stephen Kwiatek, and I'm a postdoctoral research associate at the Illinois Center for Transition and Work.
Thank you for listening to Predictors of Postschool Success Implementation. Today's webcast is the third in a series of three focused on the predictors of postschool success. As a former high school teacher and work program coordinator, I use the strategies that I'm going to share with you today in deciding how I should design instruction based around the predictors of postschool success. So, as we jump in, I think it's important for us to discuss what the PISA is. The PISA is a checklist that allows professionals to assess the degree to which a program is, quote, implementing practices that are more likely to lead to more positive post-school outcomes for students with disabilities. In other words, the PISA is a document that identifies the predictors of post-school success and includes actionable steps that can be used to implement and assess transition programming. And if you want to download your own copy of the PISA, you're welcome to go ahead and use your phone and click on the QR code. You can also go ahead and visit the link https://transitionta.org/PISA self-assessment /. Here's an image from the PISA, and what I want you to notice is that the PISA includes your predictor cluster, which if you listen to the second webcast, we talk about those. And this example is for the career awareness predictor. And we see that we have operational definitions and essential program characteristics. So career awareness is learning about opportunities, education, and skills needed in various occupational pathways to choose a career that matches one's strengths and interests. And then we also have our essential program characteristics, which are listed there as numbers 1, 2, and 3. There's also a spot here to list the degree of implementation, so you can assess the degree to which you are implementing this predictor, for example, career awareness, and then evidence of implementation to show what evidence you have to document your degree of implementation. So when we're talking about the PISA, it's important to remember there are 23 predictors of post-school success, and those are broken into 4 clusters. Those clusters are student skills, career development, collaborative systems, and policies. What's important to know, though, is the process for evaluating these 23 predictors of post-school success is the same regardless of the predictor in which category or cluster to which it belongs. And so the PISA also includes a PISA instructions and action planning guide, and a brief overview of the directions is for you to create a team to use the PISA, establish meeting locations and times, prepare for the meeting, convene the meeting, and develop an action plan. It is really helpful to be able to work with others to evaluate programs. Personally, when I use this in my own classroom, it was just me evaluating my own personal practices. So you are able to use this as a guiding document to decide to what extent you're designing instruction based on the idea of the predictors of post-school success, if it's not feasible to work collaboratively as well. So I think it's important to know that there are multiple options for using the PISA. And the first thing that we'll look at is the degree of implementation scale. And so you want to look at each of the predictors of post-school success and decide to what extent or to what degree are they being implemented. And so as you see here, there's a 4-point scale. There's everything from not currently being implemented to currently being implemented. And the way to assess that is based on the percentage of students with disabilities experiencing that program characteristic. So is it 0 to 25% from not currently being implemented, or all the way from 75% to 100% currently being implemented? There's also evidence of implementation. And so this scale helps us decide how quality and how dependable are the data that we have to support that we are actually implementing the predictors of post-school success. So no evidence. If there's no evidence, there's no examples for that. So it's not applicable. But like weak evidence would be things like policies and procedures, articulated agreements, curricular materials, meeting notes. Moderate evidence would be things like lesson plans or service plans, IEP goals, IEP objectives, transition services, and transcripts. Strong evidence would be things like data collection forms, progress monitoring, service notes, work products, instructional artifacts, and then program evaluation data supporting implementation. And so when we're looking at the PISA, we have to figure out how we're going to score them. And so here is another predictor of post-school success. It's inclusion in general education. And so the sample we're going to look at are just the first two essential characteristics. You would go through all of these for each of the predictors, but to talk through, we'll just look at two. And so the first one is provide administrative support to teachers for students with disabilities included in general education classrooms. And the second one is provide specific instruction to support students with disabilities who are included in general education. So when we're looking at these, for the first one, providing administrative support, we evaluate the degree of implementation and we examine and find out that 92% of students with disabilities um, are affected by this essential characteristic. And then the evidence of implementation is our program evaluation data. And then we look at the second essential characteristic, and we see 51% of students with disabilities experience this essential characteristic. And the evidence of implementation are materials like teacher lesson plans and IEP goals. And so when we're looking at that, we see that the first essential characteristic is currently being implemented, and we have very strong evidence. And so for that, we can stay the course with what we're doing. So we're seeing it's being implemented, and we're implementing it with strong evidence. But for the second essential characteristic, we see there's emerging implementation. So we're not there yet, and we have some moderate evidence. So if we're looking at these two and deciding which one to consider making changes with, it's more likely going to be the second one from these two examples because there's more room for growth with the second example to have stronger implementation and stronger evidence. So when you go through and examine all of the predictors, it can feel kind of difficult to know how to prioritize which predictor and why. And fortunately, in the PISA Action Planning Guide, it details all this information in more depth. But an overview is that after you evaluate every essential characteristic within each predictor, because that's the first step, you identify a predictor that needs improvement based on evaluation. So if you find there is one predictor that is really, really important, but you're not doing anything with that predictor, you're going to then focus your efforts on that predictor and that predictor's essential characteristics to improve implementation. So you're going to go through and address each of those essential characteristics. Then you're going to conduct progress monitoring and data collection efforts over time to document growth and implementation. And then you'll develop action plans to guide your efforts. In summary, the PISA is a checklist to assess implementation of the predictors of post-school success. The PISA instruction and action planning guide can be referenced for detailed guidance. And then with the team, you can use the PISA to assess the degree of implementation and evidence of implementation of predictors. Again, as a classroom teacher, I use the PISA just with my own practices and examine that on my own as well. So you can use the PISA in both ways. And then identify a prioritized predictor to improve implementation.